there's different sizes and shapes and accessories, and of course it's a tool. it has all kinds of stuff that you can add to it. I believe the last Hello, it's Henry with Woodworking by LPI. Thank you again for coming back to our channel and looking at wood tools, innovation, and tips on woodworking, and more specifically with regard to wood signs. If you get a chance, take a look at our YouTube home channel and look at the other videos with regard to wood tools, innovations, and cool stuff about making wood signs. We try to do it from a beginner level or a novice level, and hopefully it'll help you out and give you some value. So, what are we talking about today? Well, today we're going to rather be talking about wood routers. Okay, wood routers, specifically from a beginner perspective. What kind of router you choose, what's available, and such. So, wood routers, well, they make all kind of cool stuff. And here's a good example. This is a toy box, and this toy box has a name on the bottom, and it has a personalized message on the inside cover. And this is something that we made for a client, and this all was carved by a wood router. Now you can do wood routing on trim pieces, finishing pieces, and things like that with regard to your home for DIY, or you can do what I do a lot of, which is the wood signs. And you can do images here, such as this bass right here, and you can do fonts and letters and edges and all kind of cool stuff. So there's a lot of flexibility with regard to a wood router. So let's get into talking about looking at a wood router. Okay, looking at a wood router is a very crucial decision from your workshop perspective. Are you looking at it from a perspective of a business? Are you looking at it from a DIY? Are you looking at it for something that you do around the house? More of a DIY, I guess. So there's different sizes and shapes and accessories, and of course it's a tool. it has all kinds of stuff that you can add to it. I believe the last time I looked there was 88 different types of routers. Not necessarily wood routers, but different types of routers. So they work for all different kind of applications. Here we're going to talk about specifically from a wood sign perspective, but it is very useful with regard to trim, getting the edging on things done, cutting things out, if you're cutting out openings for windows in construction and such, or doorways. So it's a very versatile tool. But first of all, let's kind of look at what is a wood router. Well, a wood router is basically, and in this case, this is a Dewalt. I'm not sponsored by Dewalt. I'm not associated with Dewalt, so we got that legal stuff out of the way. It's basically a electric motor, with a router bit on the end. In this case, it's a battery. They also come in corded, which I use on my CNCs. I use this one basically for trim work and things that I can't do on a CNC, or I can, but a little more difficult. So what it does is it takes the different types of bits, which is this right here, and different sizes, and it removes material. So you go from something plain on a piece of wood like this to carving in, and this is just where I've done an example of carving in some letters and numbers and such. And it removes material. Okay, so that's the basic function of what a router is. They come in different sizes and shapes, as I mentioned. Okay, this one here is a smaller. This is a I'll find it. This is a DCW 600, and I'll put this down in the description as well, so you can get an eyeball look at it. This one here uses strictly a 1/4" shank, and then you have the bigger one, which is this one right here. And the reason these look a little weird is because I haven't got the bases on, and we'll get into the bases here in a minute. This one here is a DW 618. And it can use a 1/4", and if you change the collet, which is this right here, I can go up to a 1/2" shank, and a shank is the diameter of the bit. Okay, the size of the diameter. Okay, and this one handles a lot more work. So when I was talking about from a purpose perspective, this one's going to do a lighter work. Your wood signs, your edging, trim work, and things of that nature. This one here is going to do a lot of background, a lot of the heavy work. It's kind of the difference between like a 1/2 ton truck and a 3/4 ton truck, if that Makes weird analogy, but that kind of makes sense. Okay, so you look at it from the perspective of purpose. What are you going to be using it for? Are you going to be using a hand, which is the most popular one, a hand router, or you want to use it from a table router? Now, a table router is something, and I don't have one here, unfortunately. Excuse me. It's where you have a table platform, much like a joiner or a table saw, and the router is mounted below and has the bit sticking up. I hope you can see that, if that makes sense. And then you run pieces of wood across it to create an edge or carving. Table routers are very nice if you do a lot of edging work or a lot of trim work, baseboards, crown for a room, but they're not very flexible. If I wanted to carve something like this with that, it probably wouldn't be possible. So you also have them for CNC. Now I have another video on the CNC, part 1 and 2, that kind of goes into my CNC over here and gives you more of a description. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what a router is, a wood router is, and some of the basics. Let's look at a little more of the specifics, okay? So when you're looking at a router, several things that you want to look for, okay? One, you want to see, you want corded or do you want battery? You know, I've seen some comments on some of my videos where they were considering a battery application, such as this one here, for consistent wood carving. And, you know, it varies on opinion as to whether or not it works or it doesn't work. I'll tell you up front, it does work. I use it for my edging and all the time, and this works very well. This is my battery version. I have a corded version as well that I use on my CNCs and a couple of them over there. But the battery is so much nicer. You know, you don't have the cord, you know, that you're always fighting with, you know, and you can see when you put your base on here, which I'll do in a sec, you know, it's just so much nicer because that battery's there. The, excuse me, the downside to having a battery is it doesn't last as long. The power is there, but it just doesn't last as long. So if you want the duration of your battery to last somewhat more than like for a cord application, you know, you're going to end up getting a bigger battery. This one here happens to be the 5AH 20 ion, okay, that I just stuck on here. You can also use the flex volt on here, but man, that adds a lot of weight. So when you're using your router, let me put the base on so it makes a little more sense. I know you're all probably looking at me like, you know, what the heck, you know, perspective. All right, so maybe it looks more like a router right now. So when you're using this, you know, and you're trying to hold on to it and you're trying to keep steady, that heavy battery sometimes throws you a little off. Okay, it's awkward, it's kind of hard to hold on to, which is why I got this custom base here, but a battery can do that. Or if you use a smaller battery, the smaller 20 volt battery, which I don't, yep, actually I do have one. If you use this one, for example, it is lighter, but it don't last as long. So, you know, kind of the pros and cons to a battery one. You want to look at whether or not it is variable speed. Now, what I mean by variable speed. So the speed of the bit, you know, is going to range in the 12,000 to 16,000 RPM. Okay, well, you can change that and slow it down. Now, there are certain times that you would want to slow down a bit, depending on what you're using it for, what type of bit you're using it for. But normally you want a higher speed. Okay, I'll let you know that up front. So don't get wrapped around the axle with regard to it has to be a lower bit for speed for this, a higher bit for that. That's digging way too much in the weeds. In a generic sense, majority of the time, you're going to use it at full speed. But it's nice to have that option. So on this one here, you can see right here, it is variable speed. I can turn it up and I can turn it down. That is a nice option to consider when you're looking at a router. Okay, another option that you want to look at is whether or not it's a soft start. And soft start, okay, well, what is soft start? Well, your older routers back in the day, can't believe I'm saying that, but back in the day, the older routers, it would turn on and it would go directly to speed immediately, you know, up to 12,000, 16,000 RPM. That's not a bad thing from a carving perspective. but it can be, because if it automatically just really quickly goes to that speed, it can, you know, depending on how close you are, you know, or what you're doing, it can jerk, you know, where you're at. It can ruin a piece that you're working on. Sometimes it can be a little hard to handle when it starts off. So, you know, it's a fixed speed. Now, majority of the newer models, they are variable speed, or excuse me, soft start. Soft start. So what it does is it starts slow and it just slowly goes up to speed, which is really nice because it gives you the anticipation when you start your work job and you start carving. Okay. Another consideration that you might want to look at, let me take the base off here so you can see it. Excuse me. Is whether or not it has a lock. Okay, and that's that button right there. Your older ones, on the Colette here, had two bolts. One was a regular adjustment bolt and one was a jam nut. And you had to take two wrenches, and some of them still today are that way. I've seen some of the table routers that way, where you're putting in two different tools. Now, if you're using two of these tools, you know, on this one here, you only push in the button, which holds the armature, the spindle, in place, and you're just loosening it, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. But on the older ones, you didn't have this button where it held the spindle. You had to use two of them to loosen it. So, you know, this button here is just, it's real nice. It makes it really nice. Okay, so that's another consideration that you're looking at. With regard to brand name, excuse me, I'm sorry. With regard to brand name, you know, pretty much all the popular brands, your Dewalts, your Rigids, not so much the Craftsman maybe. I'm not beating up on Craftsman, that's not what I'm doing. I really don't like mentioning brand names, but they're all pretty much the same. Okay, the only reason I stick with Dewalt is because Dewalt served me very well over the years. Okay, so that's my personal choice, personal opinion. Obviously, you can make your own. I mean, you have Milwaukee, you have Rigid. There's other different brands, and they're all pretty much the same. They all do pretty well. It depends on how you treat it and how you maintain it. Okay, so let's look at some of the different options that comes with a router. Okay, so you have the base router, all right, and obviously you're going to have different bits, and I have a router bit video, and I'll put that in the description so you can see the different options on a router bit. But you have different options that you can put onto this thing. Okay, so I kind of showed you this already, but this is the base, and I happen to get this base right here from Make a Wood Sign, and it's Dave and Eric. They do a wonderful job of carving. Kind of inspired me to start the wood business a few years ago, a wood sign rather business, and I got that from there, and I'll put that in the description as to where you can get this base. They have them from different models. They have it for the big one as well, which is this one right here. And this is how it comes, and you take the screws here and you screw it into the base that comes with the router. Okay, so all right, so let's you have different types of bases. Okay, and I'm going to put this one on. This one lines up. There's a little set of black marks inside there. I don't know if you can see that stick out, and I line that up with the channel right here, and it just, on this model, it just snaps in. Okay, and it has two arm puts here that you squeeze that lift it off, but when you snap it back in like that, and then I'm going to do that, and that stops it from moving up and down. So you have a whole bunch of different options with regard to the base. Okay, and unfortunately at the moment this is the only one I have for this one. I like the two handles. It gives me a lot more, when I'm using it, it gives me a lot more control. And then the open window in the front of it allows me to see what I'm carving as to what I'm carving. Okay, so bases are options. Now on the bigger one I'll show you the different options as well. Okay, so you have the bigger router, and as I mentioned on this, you could go with a 1/4 or a 1/2. All right, now there's a lot of opinion with regard to 1/4 and a 1/2 inch drill bits, or not drill bits, sorry, router bits. Just not my day to talk today, I guess. So I use majority, 99% of what I do, excuse me, 99% of what I do is 1/4 inch. Okay, so like I said, if you want more information on that, I have the router bit video that goes more into details to what I use. So let's get back to the router. Now, you have your base router, and there's a couple options that you can do. All right, this here is the generic base that comes with it. And you see it has two handles here for grip. Okay, and it has a clear plastic across the bottom. And like with all Dewalts, you know, they have those markers in there. So I'm going to line that up with, you know, the side there, and I'll put this on just like that. Okay, and this is a generic setup. Okay, and on this one here I have a coupler, and the only reason there's a coupler on there is because I was using it to do some cutout designs. It's a specific type of bit, and as you can see, and then I put this coupler, and this is another option you can add in. I put this coupler in here to hold that bit, and then I can use the edge of it there to go against the board like so. Hopefully that makes sense. And I do cutouts for shapes and things. Okay, but that's the only reason that's there. So this is a generic design. Okay. So when you typically buy a router, this is what you're going to get. This in here happens to be a corded. I just don't have the cord plugged into it, but the cord goes right here. So I'm going to take this off. Let's look at a plunge. Okay, so plunge. What's a plunge? Well, this is the plunge base right here. Personal opinion as to whether or not you like the plunge or you don't like the plunge. I can tell you I don't use this very often. In fact, I use it very rarely. And what the plunge allows you to do, let me put it on here. What the plunge allows you to do is it'll, well, hold on. I'll just do it this way. What the plunge allows you to do is set it on a material. Hopefully you can see this. Set it on a material, and then you lower the router to it. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not. Hopefully that makes sense. You lower the router down to the wood, and it allows you to come up. And you have settings on here that you can set from here to here as to what the depth is. Okay, and then the spring load and such. You know, this is good for for certain applications. It's not something that I use. But if you get a combo kit, this is sometimes what you're going to receive. Okay, so I'm not cutting on this, and it's very great for certain applications, just not for what I use for wood signs. Typically I don't. Some folks do, and they do very well at it. It's just not my preference. So I prefer more, you know, this base, which goes onto it and comes out to look like so. Okay, so bases are options. Now there's dust port that you can get with these also. The dust port is really kind of a cool feature. If you have a dust system or you have a shop vac, the dust port's great. It pulls a lot of the way the debris. It pulls away as you're carving, so you have visual, you know, on top of it. Because everybody, you know, who uses or cuts wood or does woodworking carving, we all want to see what we're doing as we're doing that. So that's great from that perspective. A downside to a dust port is it's a hose and it gets in the way. So it really depends on your opinion. Okay, it's a personal opinion thing again. So, you know, when I was cutting these, you know, I did them by hand, and I like to see what's going on, but I also like having the availability of pulling up, you know, the router to look and such. And I don't have a cord here because this is a battery version, and it doesn't have a dust port on it. But you know, the downside again is if you don't have a dust port, you have all the sawdust around. Okay, so pros and cons. All right, maintenance. Let's get into a little bit of maintenance on these, and then I'll try and wrap this up because I try not to make my videos too long. I can talk a lot, so. All right, so I'm going to take the base off. All right, and then I'm going to take the bit out. You know, taking the bit out sometimes can be challenging. Okay, so I got the bit out. You know, some of the things on maintenance on these things that you want to look at. One, you want to keep it clean. You know, what do we not use in a tool shop that we don't want to keep clean, right? Of course, we all keep our wood shops clean. You know, there's no dust, no debris, you know, nothing. Yeah, right. So you want to make sure you keep your battery connections here clean. Okay, which I obviously haven't. Okay, but I'm going to take my compressors here and clean them out. So you want to keep those connections clean. So it's a good clean connection into your battery. So that's one. All right. Another thing that you want to look at on these, and this one here happens to be, that's something I didn't mention. A lot of the new ones are brushless. So you don't have to worry about putting the brushes in if they go out. You know, you ever turned on the router and see that the light comes on the bottom, but it don't run? Well, it means the brushes are out and you have to replace the brushes in them. And I do that on the CNC routers probably about every 100, 150 hours. You know, those brushes will go out. So brushes are consideration on the ones that have brushes. This one here is brushless. So it doesn't have brushes in it, which is really nice. That's another feature you might want to consider when you're looking at a router. The collet here, when you take this off, you'll see that there's a lot of dust and dirt inside there. Okay, see all that dust and dirt inside there? Okay, so as you're doing, you know, a lot of carving, the purpose of the collet is to come together like this and hold against, you know, the router bit. You know, the shank of the bit, and then grabs hold of that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure this is clean, and that one's not clean. So we're going to clear this out. Yeah, I just did a video on the air compressor, and I use this thing all the time. So another reason to have an air compressor. The unfortunate thing is it puts a lot of dust around, which is probably not a good thing. So you want to make sure this collet is clean, okay, to make sure you have a firm grip on the router bit, because that's obviously a good thing. This thing's spinning at 12,000, 16,000 RPM. If it gets loose, that's going to hurt. So you want to make sure you take care of that. All right. And the bottom, it gets really, really dirty inside here. Okay, so if you have a can of compressed air, or you have an air compressor like this, you know, clean this out. You know, yeah, you don't want to go crazy on it. I mean, but it's just little maintenance, especially on the ones like the ones on the CNCs. You know, not the battery, the corded, that has brushes and a lot of black dust from the brushes get down inside here in the armature. It'll cause it to overheat over time. So that's another one that you want to consider on maintenance. All right. So basically, keeping it operational, keeping it free here for your adjustment, and they pretty much last a long, long time. A couple of the routers that I have, I think one of them on my CNCs, I'm going on almost 3 years. I've replaced the brushes in it several times. But it's going on about 3 years. And I do maintenance on them. I use them every other day, maybe, well, 4 or 5 times a day, or a week rather. So, you know, they get used a lot. But if you take care of them like any tool, like your car, you know, or your house or whatever, you know, Dad always used to say, you know, you take care of it, it takes care of you. So maintenance is a good thing. Okay, now I realize this is a high-level overbrief of routers and considerations, so we'll kind of summarize up here just a little quick. You're going to have the corded, non-corded. You're going to have variable speed you want to consider. Excuse me. The button for stopping the armature from spinning, so you can take it off a lot easier. Okay, you want to consider that as well. Variable speed, I mentioned that, and then the slow start. And you can also buy them as a single, or you can buy them as a combo, which includes, you know, all the stuff, you know, in a kit. And then, you know, what I like to do, because I like to have the most control, this one here's for the big one, this one here's for the small one. They're the same thing. You can add accessories to it. These are very much worth it, by the way. And like I said, you can get these at Make a Wood Sign. And I'll put the link for these down below so you can pick up one of these. They're not real expensive, but boy, do they come in handy. So I hope this was helpful to you with regard to looking at a router and understanding a little bit of some of the things that you're getting yourself into. Be sure to check out my my other video with regard to router bits and take a peek at that. And I hope this helps you out. And I appreciate your time in watching the video today. Okay. This is Henry with Woodworking by LPI, and I'll see you in the next video.